This necessitates collaboration from all stakeholders, mainly the Israelis, who have been in a very provocative behavior recently.
But can you say to them, please don't get involved? Would you say that to Hezbollah? Please don't get involved.
Well,
would you urge them not to?
It's a fact of life that when tension in the region crosses a certain threshold, I don't think anyone can tell anyone what to do.
Ambassador, just tell me what the situation is currently on the ground in Lebanon.
Well, it's pretty volatile and serious. Fortunately, the exchange of fire is still of low to mid intensity, but the potential for escalation is there, and it's frankly in the hands of the Israelis if they intend to take it further. We still are in a defensive mode, in a reactive mode, and we do not have the intention to escalate. We call for the recommitment by everyone to the terms of the cessation of hostilities that has been governing the situation in South Lebanon since 2006.
Describe to people, give me an indication of how close we are to the brink here. How close are we to something significant changing?
At this specific moment, I don't think anyone could have a wise guess on how close we are, because as I said, many parameters are at stake, but they mainly have to do with the Israeli intentions. We've been under Israeli provocations on our side, towards our side of the border since Sunday. And as I said, our action is purely defensive and reactive. However, if the situation in Gaza evolves, which I'm afraid it will, it carries all the potential for a spillover towards the whole region, not only towards Lebanon. But we're deploying, exerting all possible efforts as Lebanese government to make sure that calm prevails on the borders, because we're not interested in triggering a conflict.
When you say if the situation in Gaza evolves, what do you mean by that?
Well, the civilian casualties are frankly unbearable. We've seen yesterday the hospital, and before even, we were yesterday at more than 3,000. I just want you to know, and your viewers, that the social fabric in the whole region is similar. So the tension and the violence, it propagates naturally towards all the countries of the region. I mean, we've seen even in some European capitals and here in London, the protests and how much the emotions are high. So this is a very contagious conflict that cannot be confined to its theater of operation. That's why we call for restraint, we call for de-escalation, and we call most importantly to a ceasefire and halting the targeting of Palestinian civilians, which is taking a very worrying trend.
I suppose what I'm trying to get to here is, are you saying that if Israel is to mount a ground invasion, if Israel is to launch a ground operation, in that situation, would Lebanon strike back?
I don't want to put it this way. I do not have exactly what would be the trigger point, but out of analysis and assessment of the situation, if the situation in Gaza worsens, as I said, it would be very difficult to contain the conflict in its original theater of operation. That's why if you want me to describe accurately the current situation, it's a race between diplomacy and war. And we all hope, obviously, for diplomacy to take over.
Lots of people are deeply worried that Hezbollah may well enter this conflict, may well become embroiled in it. How likely do you think that is to happen?
As I said, until this very moment, their action is purely reactive and of defensive nature. But what I've just said on the regional tension and on the situation in Gaza, I think applies, and everyone should be worried that Lebanon and maybe other countries get entangled into the conflict. So I think the only way forward is de-escalation and stopping the targeting of Palestinian civilians and finding a diplomatic solution.
But you're not separating, when we're talking about it, you're not separating Hezbollah and Lebanon.
Well, I'm talking about the Lebanese side. As Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese society. Of course, they have their modus operandi, but until now, they've been exerting self-restraint, and their action is purely reactive and defensive.
Do you think they will continue to exercise
I hope
self-restraint?
so, and I have reasons to believe that they would, as long as the situation in Gaza is the tide is being reversed towards de-escalation. That's why it's very important.
How much dialogue do you have with Hezbollah in terms of do you understand what their next steps are going to be?
We do have regular dialogues, and they're represented somehow in the government of Lebanon, and the government officials, they have, I assume, daily contacts with them, and they know well what's their modus operandi, or what's their assessment of the situation. That's why the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs have said on several occasions this week that self-restraint is a must from the Israeli side. They've been in continuous provocation towards our side of the border. So self-restraint must come from both sides.
Can you stop Hezbollah getting involved?
Well, as I said, Hezbollah has its modus operandi, but it's part of the Lebanese society, and they have their constituency. And we all know that war is not an easy venture to start.
Yeah.
But as I said, this necessitates collaboration from all stakeholders, mainly the Israelis, who have been in a very provocative behavior recently.
But can you say to them, please don't get involved? Would you say that to Hezbollah? Please don't get involved.
Well,
would you urge them not to?
It's a fact of life that when tension in the region crosses a certain threshold, I don't think anyone can tell anyone what to do. It just propagates naturally. Now, notwithstanding our efforts as Lebanese government to make sure that Lebanon does not get entangled, but sometimes even if your intention goes in one direction, events on the ground, they lead you to a different direction.
Would you ask them not to get involved? Do you think it's a good idea for them?
Well, when Israel targets our territory and provokes on daily basis and kills journalists and targets civilians in Lebanon, it's difficult to ask any Lebanese not to react. As I said, we are in a defensive mode. No country can stand by when its territories is provoked or attacked. So, as I said, it's not that easy. It's not a computer game where you just push a button and the other side just stops. It's something that needs the cooperation of all the stakeholders in the region and beyond.
And Iran is one of those, and is clearly very important in this conversation. What's your message to the Iranians in this?
Well, the Iranians, of course, have their schemes and their policies in the region. I don't think they're interested in triggering a conflict, but if, as I said, if the conflict crosses a certain threshold, the potential is there, and they've said it. Their foreign minister has said it on several occasions, that unless the trend is reversed in Gaza, all the risk for a regional conflict are there.
And the same, I mean, the American President Biden has said that America could see a way in which it would seek to defend American nationals in the region if it felt that it had to. What would your message to the Americans be?
I think the best service to the region now is to deploy diplomatic assets, not military assets. The region needs de-escalation and does not need escalatory statements.
So you think America should move its military assets away from the region?
Well, it depends what are there in the region to do. We don't want to start a race to the bottom in the region, where military assets from one side could lead to military assets from the other side. I think the best approach now is to de-escalate.
You said that countries, when they are attacked or targeted, have the right to defend themselves. Does that extend to Israel too?
Well, when they do breach every single article of international law, because self-defense is not something absolute. It is well structured by international law, and we've seen the UN report yesterday that Israel is exerting collective punishment against the Palestinian people. So even self-defense, which is an exception where the international community or international law has accepted the fact that some countries, in case they're attacked, they can resort to military power, but they need to abide by certain rules, which Israel is not. It's enforcing a collective punishment on a civilian population and targeting civilian population. Today I saw a letter written by 7 scholars, 7 lawyers, UK lawyers, which are not biased against Israel, but yet they're saying that they have significant concerns about Israeli behavior against civilians in Gaza. So self-defense is not something absolute that justifies targeting and killing civilians.
I mean, Israel says it's attempting to eradicate a terror organisation, Hamas, after a terror attack which killed a significant number of innocent people. Do you think Hamas should be eradicated?
Well, eradication is a big word. I think what should be done is to favor the culture of moderation in the region. And that would lead to the containment of everyone who has extremist or maximalist ideas. Israel is doing just the opposite. Israel, I think, is doing Hamas a big favor because, as we speak today, the future fighters of Hamas are being radicalized in the streets of Gaza. What can you tell a small boy, a young 14 years old who lost his family or his father and mother out of desperation? You would find him in a few years a fighter in Hamas. So the current behavior, Israeli behavior, would not definitely lead to the eradication of Hamas.
Do you think it's a worthwhile aim, though? Should Hamas be eradicated?
Well, if they representative of the population, they should be their constituencies should be provided with an alternative. What can you tell the Palestinians when for 70 years all channels towards statehood, towards dignity, towards the self-determination are blocked? And even when Palestinians try to seize the International Court of Justice or the International Criminal Court, this is also blocked. This is not meant to justify any behavior, but one needs to understand holistically the conflict. It did not start on Saturday, definitely. However drastic was Saturday's event. This is a conflict that has been going on for 70 years now. And until and unless it's looked at in its entirety, no solution would be able to deal with the situation.
I mean, that brings us to the next big question, really, which is how do you move on from here? Is a two-state solution possible?
Definitely, it's the only solution that is possible because show me a better one.
But it hasn't worked, has it? And actually, some people would argue. I mean, I know what you've just said. Some people would argue that up until this point, up until around a week ago, the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians was not horrendous. I mean, the people were being allowed to sort of cross and to work. Things were relatively stable until what happened, until the attack happened. And now there is huge instability. And that was triggered by a Hamas decision to attack innocent people as opposed to Israel's decision to attack.
Yes, but it was fuming. It was fuming and it was unnoticed. When we used to tell, before the Saturday events, we used to tell our international friends and partners, don't put the Palestinian-Israeli conflict on the back burner. It has the potential to surprise negatively everyone, and we will all be caught by another cycle of violence. So if something positive could come out, however cynical it might look, but if something positive could come out of this situation, is for us, for the international community, once and for all, address the conflict in its entirety and offer a political perspective, a political horizon for the Palestinians. No people could sustain occupation for 70 years and all their political and legal channels being blocked. I mean, at some point they will explode. And
so you
that's
can
what's
see the
happening.
justification for it?
It's not a justification, it's just an assessment of a fact of life.
Yeah. Are you saying that the UK ignored your warnings?
Well, the whole international community ignored our warnings. When we Arab countries were saying we have put on the table a peace initiative called the Arab Peace Initiative, which is essentially nothing else than the Security Council resolutions. It's the international legitimacy.
Yeah.
Israel withdraws to the lines of 4th of July and accepts a Palestinian state. And then, and only then, all Arab countries will pursue normal relations with Israel. That's the essence of the Arab Peace Initiative, which was issued in Beirut, Lebanon in 2002, yet it was ignored all these years.
But Israel has to know that it has its own security too, and it can trust that it will be recognized.
Well, only peace can bring security. Security is not reached or achieved by military means. Of course, there should be some understandings, but the essence is peace, is giving Palestinians what the international legitimacy has given them, and which Israel is refraining of abiding to.
Does Israel have the right to exist?
Well, in the Arab Peace Initiative, we've said it. If Israel withdraws to the line of 4th of July and accepts Palestinian statehood and withdraws from all Arab-occupied territories, then all Arab countries will pursue normal relations with Israel. When you pursue normal relations, you pursue normal relations with an entity that exists. But this is conditional on Israel implementing its obligations under international legitimacy. And this initiative has been reiterated successively each year in all Arab summits, and all Islamic states also joined and pledged to implement it once there is peace with the Palestinians and withdrawal from Arab occupied territories. But Israel is simply withdrawing because it still thinks it could be an exception to international law. It's the only country that is defying more than 60 Security Council resolutions. And yet it's falling on deaf ears in the international community. So these double standards are not helpful, if you want, because Israel is breaching the very same principle that is being given as a justification or as a pillar in the war against Russian war against Ukraine, for example, which is non-acquisition of territory.
Yeah.
So if you don't want the Russians to acquire territories by force, then you wouldn't want Israel to acquire territories by force, except that Israel has been doing it for 70 years.
Yeah. People suggest that if Israel is successful and it removes Hamas, or at least mostly removes Hamas, something will have to happen, something will have to be there in its place, or there will be a vacuum. There is a conversation happening right now in the UK government and beyond it, around the world. Some people suggest that the UK, the US could play a role in that. Do you think that that's the right way forward?
Well, first I challenge the possibility of just eradicating Hamas or Hamas being a spare part that you can just remove and replace with another one. It's not an easy job. As I said, it's only radicalizing the civilian population in Gaza. And Hamas is deeply anchored in the Palestinian threat. And it's not a moral statement, it's just I'm stating a fact. Because I know of the region, and I don't think the eradication of Hamas will be an easy target for the Israelis. But I agree that there should be, at the end of the tunnel, some holistic solution. Going back to the status quo ante is simply not a sustainable solution, because we would be curbing the violence this time, but sitting idly waiting for the next round of violence, which will definitely erupt in few months or few years. So we should, for once, address the entirety of the conflict.
We've talked a lot about violence, we've talked a lot about some of the horrific things that are happening to civilian populations, and one of them is the hospital attack. Now, there has been back and forth on who is responsible for that. The Americans, President Biden, said that he believes that it was an attack, a weapon that was launched, that was targeted at Israel, that was launched from within Gaza. Do you agree with that? Do you think that there is a possibility that it was an accident?
Well, this is cynical to accuse the victims of victimizing themselves,
well,
of,
if it's an
killing
accident,
themselves.
if it's an accident, not intentional, there's a possibility and a suggestion that it was a misfired weapon, not an intentionally fired weapon.
I don't have of course, the information that President Biden should have or has. But I go back to the track record of the Israelis. They have targeted civilians deliberately in the past.
So you believe it's the Israelis who have done this?
I do believe that. I do believe that because it's simply very compatible with their track record. They've done it with impunity many times throughout their modern and old, less modern history. They've done it in Lebanon in 2006 with impunity. They've done it successively in Gaza. They've done it 3 years ago in Gaza. So why would I assume that the Palestinians did it to themselves? Now, having said this, again, I don't have the information that President Biden had in mind, but I would assume that this is very typical Israeli behavior.
Do you think there's a possibility that there's a disinformation campaign going on here? Because there's some suggestion that in the wake of not knowing exactly what happened, that vacuum has been filled by people who are determined to accuse Israel of doing it, even if Israel hasn't done it, and we don't know, you've just said we're not sure yet, that it's being used and weaponized in a political disinformation campaign.
Well, it's exactly the same way Israel said that babies were decapitated. And
you don't believe that?
Well, even President Biden, when he said it, a few hours later, the White House issued a statement that this is not verified information.
But you don't believe it happened?
Well, I haven't seen proof that it happened.
So Israel has provided proof.
I haven't seen proof. I don't know, frankly. But what I saw is that President Biden used this information, and then few hours later, the White House said, we don't have verification for the accuracy of these allegations. That's what they said.
Why do you think President Biden would do that?
I don't know, mistakes happen. And it's a situation that caught everyone by surprise. So we're dealing with an instantaneously evolving crisis, and such mistakes do happen. But to answer your question, yes, well, we obviously live in a post-truth world, so misinformation and fake information and fake news exist. That's why I think everyone should be responsibly alert to making sure that the disseminated information is accurate, because emotions are high, and we don't want to add fuel to an already difficult crisis.
I just want to ask you finally about the safety of civilians and citizens in Lebanon. We've seen some embassies, some sort of protests and attacks on embassies. Is it safe for foreign nationals in Lebanon right now? Would you advise that they leave? I mean, the UK and the Canadian governments, I think, are suggesting that people probably should leave. What do you think about that?
Our police is doing its utmost to make sure that no foreigners or no Lebanese nationals are affected by these protests. Of course, they are a reaction to yesterday's carnage at the hospital. We're a hospitable country, so I don't think that they have something to worry about from this angle in particular. And as I said, we understand well our international obligations in protecting foreign embassies, and that's what the police has been doing tirelessly since yesterday.
I just want to end on a thought about what it's like to be in Lebanon right now. If you are somebody who's living there, going about their life, just wants to get on with things, doesn't want to be dragged into talking about a conflict. How does it feel to be in your country at the moment? Are people afraid? Are they? Give me a sense.
Well, of course, it's an apprehension. Of course, it's a source of worry for us, the situation in South Lebanon and the region at large. But you know, there is something called the Lebanese paradox, the Lebanese contradiction. While all the reasons exist for us to worry, but yet people are living their lives, their difficult lives, obviously, but enjoying their time. And this summer was booming in Lebanon. The beaches were full, all the restaurants were full. This is the Lebanese resilience in its essence. But it's true that since Saturday, it's an additional layer of concern for us. And we genuinely hope that Lebanon will not be entangled into this deadly conflict.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.